then. So we did start this a week ago, but I ended up having to stop because some stuff came up. But anyway, let's get back to reverbs. There aren't any hard and fast rules about what reverb to use, when to use it. But the reasons mixed engineers use a reverb is it's about creating space and perspective in your track. There's a few sort of rules you need to keep in mind when using reverbs. Small reverbs, short delays are always going to make things sound bigger. Reverbs with decays under a second and delays under 100 milliseconds are going to make the track sound bigger instead of sort of pushing the sounds further away. Long delays, long reverb pre-delays and reverb decay settings will make things sound further away in the mix. So if you've got pre-delays over 100 milliseconds, it's going to push the sound further away in the mix. I mean, but the trick between something sounding too big or sort of distance is the level that you have the effect. So the level that you actually have the reverb on. So let's go over the difference between inserts and sends, because it's very important when we talk about reverbs. So let me bring a reverb up on this channel. Right, so I'm just going to bring up Valhalla Reverb. So I've just inserted that onto the track. So the difference between inserts and sends. An insert is where you process the signal at the source. So you insert the effect onto the original audio onto the channel. So the audio runs straight into the inserted effect and the processed signal goes straight out your stereo bus. Inserts are normally reserved for compressors, EQs, that kind of effect. I'm not saying that you can't use reverbs on those channels, but reverbs do tend to be quite CPU intensive, and you don't want to be having loads of different reverbs on all the channels. You want to try and keep it to, like, one or two reverbs in the whole track, and sort of, a smaller one for a smaller plate type reverb for your drums, a hall or something for your pads, whatever, and it will make your mix sound a little bit more balanced. So the best way to be using the reverb is to use it as a send effect. So we'll set up a send channel. So I'm using Studio One CC. So here's the drum stem that we are, and here's the effects send over here. So it's the same in any DAW that you use. What this allows me to do is that I control the amount of signal going into the reverb, so you can control the wet signal, and then what we can do is by adjusting the effects bus send fader, we can adjust the wet and dry signals. So let's just let's have a play of this drum loop. So this is the send here when I'm sending to the channel. So by adjusting this fader, I'm able to sort of adjust the wet and dry signal. So I can pull it down. So there's no reverb other than what's on the loop already. And if I... So that's the most efficient way of using reverbs, and probably the best way you should be really using reverbs. don't get carried away. Don't use loads of them. Don't stick a reverb on every track. Use them on the buses. Keep it tidier. So I'm going to show you a quick difference now. We've got the reverb out about the longer and the shorter reverbs. So here we got this is a large reverb. So you can see the pre-delay and the decay is all very long. So you can hear the difference of this on the signal. Whatever you're going to do, it's not really going to work very well on drums, but you can hear that it softens the signal and it makes it sound further away in the mix. And you can hear the decay and the length of the reverb going on over. All those can be adjusted, but let's put a shorter one on. So as I said earlier on, the shorter reverbs will make a sound bigger and punchier. Shorter tail on the reverb, not near as big, so that it's tighter in with the sound, just makes it pound a little bit punchier and bigger and further forward in the mix. So there's a quick breakdown of the long and short reverbs and anything else we do. One thing I will say is don't confuse room size with decay. It might seem logical that a big room would have a massive long tail on it, but if you think about the real world, you know, the effects of walls will heavily dampen the sound so that the tail dies away quicker. So, you know, use that when you're mixing. Just remember that a big spacious sound doesn't necessarily mean a 10-second reverb tail. You know, you can just work on that decay, get that sound right. And room size is fully adjustable as well. Once you set the decay, you can then adjust the room size and make things bigger. One of the other things I always thought about with people is making sure that you clean your reverbs up as well. It's very, very important. Reverbs are not any different from sort of just anything else in the mix. You know what I mean? The reverbs will tend to get pretty muddy down in some of those kind of 400 around that area. You'll get a sort of real build up as the reverb wet signal goes through and then is brought back up and against the original sound. So you should always use EQs. Let's bring an EQ up. So it's just like any other channel. When you're mixing a record, you know always how you low pass filters, high pass filters, cut the bottom. Yeah, same with reverbs. Get rid of stuff at the bottom. Get rid of stuff at the top. Sometimes you might need to do little dips out here if things get a little bit. If you get a little bit of a fatty build up, I suppose is the way to describe it. So here we go. This is just the reverb channel on here, and you can hear what we can do by using EQ on the channels. We can cut away all those bottom bits there. We can get rid of any of high-end harshness, but then we can also boost areas that you want for a sort of extra sort of sound design and sort of dynamics to your reverbs. So there we go, you've just got a whole different reverb coming up underneath there. So EQ, always clean your reverbs up. Clean them up just like you would any other audio channel, and it's just going to help you mix. This is going to keep everything really, really, really kind of tight. So I'm going to run over a few sort of things that you can sort of, that's the kind of general basics of reverbs. It's pretty straightforward, but I'm really surprised at how many people sort of just don't know that, and they sort of end up sticking a reverb on every channel. Yeah, and just you end up with 10 reverbs in a track, and they haven't EQ'd anything. So you end up with all this kind of extra noise and unwanted frequencies that you just could have cleared out at the beginning. So if you those simple things at the beginning, using them as a send effect, using them as EQs, and adjusting the wet and dry signal is going to dramatically improve the way you use reverbs in a track. So I'll explain to you pre-delay in a reverb, because it's very important, and I think people just need to understand what pre-delay is. On Valhalla, here is the pre-delay. So pre-delay is the delay time between the input of the signal and the first occurrence of the reverb. So it's how quickly it's going to react. So it's, you're able to adjust very accurately and minutely the time at which the reverb is going to react to the sound entering into it. It's just like in real life, when you clap your hands, you hear the reverb, or you hear a bang outside. The reverb is a natural occurrence. The pre-delay, and it's like the sound that you get afterwards. So it basically is very important because it will make the reverb sound natural. Our ears understand reverb. We're around it every day. From everything that you do, there will be reverb. So our ears are very accustomed to it. And so the importance of pre-delay, if you don't get that right, our ears will know it, and it sounds very unnatural. So then it becomes one of those things of the reverb will not sound right in the track. So it's really important that you get it right. Literally, because it's something that we're surrounded with every single day. I like to use longer pre-delay times to kind of separate the signal and the reverb, because it makes sure that the sounds are heard separately. There's two distinct occurrences, just like in nature, the original sound and then the reverb coming through as well. So I'll anything from like 40 to 80 milliseconds on the pre-delay is the kind of area that I generally kind of get into. And again, don't confuse pre-delay and the decay stuff or whatever with the room size. It's not. It's very different, and we'll get into those as well. So it's by using those longer pre-delay times, it's just going to give more depth to your reverb, and it won't mask the original signal as well. So let's see if we can kind of give you a little demonstration. So you can hear there now, I've moved it up, so it's 47 milliseconds, so you can hear the reverb, the delay between the first, sort of the signal going into the reverb and when the actual reverb wet signal starts. So the further up the pre-delay goes, the more gap there is, which is just like real life. So if you're like you hear a gunshot and you're a distance away, you hear the sort of reverb of part of the sound afterwards, and this is what we're basically tweaking here. If we get really short with them, there's no discernible gap between the two, so it gets a little bit muddy. So pre-delay is your friend. It's just something that people don't really want to mess around with. They do tend to kind of just load up presets and be happy with them. And as I said, don't confuse pre-delay and decay with room size, because all these kind of things are adjustable. The room size is just where they've got the original reverb sound from, you know, the design of the reverb, the size that it's going for. Right, pre-delay is the single most powerful feature in most of the reverbs you're going to use. You know, if you get the pre-delay right, it's, you know, you get the right amount of dry signal going through before the reverb hits it. It's just going to make your mixes more defined, tighter, cleaner. You've been able to, like, you know, if you're using it on vocals, you'll keep the attack on the words really clean and upfront. It's, you know, in some ways, getting the pre-delay right on a vocal, on a reverb, is sort of like, you know, using a compressor, some would say, really. You know, letting the vocal information come through, it just makes it tight. Well, next thing I just want to run over with you. We're going to talk about short reverb times, because they're really the reverb you're going to end up using most when you're working. So something to bear in mind is that you're gonna, you know, you spend the venues where you're going to hear this music. I mean, it's just stuff that people really don't think about. So I'm trying to just open things up, open your perspective a little bit on reverb, so let you think a little bit different for it. But the kind of spaces where you spend most of your time, and also where the nightclubs or anything else, they're going to be large acoustical spaces, so they're going to have long reverbs. So, you know, you can be looking at like 1 second, 2 seconds, you know, if you're in a big room in a club, etc. So to stick those on the track in sort of large amounts is not going to help you, because the track is going to be playing in the room with that kind of acoustical large thing. So using shorter reverb times, you can allow you to create depth without muddying your mix. You know, so keep them short. Honestly, just keep the reverb time short. You know, what you can remember, you can do, with using the longer pre-delay, long pre-delay. It's just gonna get everything sounding really, really tight, and you'll just get a much nicer, tighter reverbs. And yeah, as I said, not gonna get so much mud in your mix. So I'm just kind of making their smaller reverb sizes, basically. Shorter size, shorter reverb times, going to give you the depth that you're looking for. See, we've been messing around with like the pre-delay. We can make it a bit longer. So you get the defined hit on that loop, on the sort of the snare conga hit. So we're just making things, as I said, much smaller reverbs. It just makes everything tighter, and you don't need a lot of it. Something else I'm always getting asked is how much reverb to use. It's a difficult one because it's all really personal. The reverbs that people, the type of reverbs that people like, how much reverb they want to put on, etc., etc. But one of the things I always say to people is the idea of the reverb is to lie underneath your sounds. It's about, you know, creating a believable ambience, blend and glue. I mean, that's it. So the way I generally apply reverb would be solo the instrument, and then I'll bring up the reverb until I hear it, and then just back it off a little bit. That's really all you need, unless you're going for big, dramatic, washy type effects. But when it comes to just like, you know, your drums, percussion, other elements in the track, really that will probably be about right. That's my personal view. It works for me. I mean, you know, other people do it different ways, but I think you're just to get a cleaner, tighter mix that will work really well for you. So once again, I'll just go over that again. So the way I do it is solo the sound. I'll bring up the effects bus here, the fader on the bus channel, and I'll bring it up until you can just hear the reverb, and then just pull it back a tad, and that will really kind of fix it up for you. What else I was going to talk about? I know a lot of you guys work with headphones, so when you're using headphones, it's really difficult to fuck it up. Basically, it's a misjudge things and, you know, blend too little or too much reverb. The best way to work around with reverb with headphones is really going to be putting the reverb on, working off of those rules of just putting a smidgen on, and then you really have to go and listen to it on you know, laptop speakers, in your car stereo or whatever, just to get the feel, because the headphones are not going to give you that full perspective of the reverb. I mean, you might get it after a little while of practice or whatever, but to make your life easier, look, yeah, work on your headphones, but then go and sit in the car, have a listen to them. And if not, the rule is just don't go crazy. It's far too easy to put too much reverb on when you're wearing headphones. So I'm just going to give you a few little tips and tricks that you can try out when using reverbs. I mean, it's not a complicated subject. It's not like mid-side processing. It's not like overall mixes. It's just, I'm giving you a real good basic grounding of you know, reverbs, what they're for, how you use them. So one thing I would look at is try compressing your reverbs. It's a really good way of trying to get the reverb sitting neatly in the mix. You try using limiters, compressors, transient shapers. What I would do is I would look at, you can try adding like compressors and stuff after. Give me a sec. Just got a little bit of audio glitching, maybe. Yeah, I can't hear the audio here. Give me a sec. You guys can probably hear it in the stream, so. Sorry about that, just Soundflower. So, yes, talking about compression on your reverbs. What you can try and do is, you can stick, here's your effects channel, same in any, as I said, same in any other program. There we go. What we're doing here is we're using Native Instruments Transient Master. So we're sticking it on after the effects. This is another little sound design thing. So basically, I mean, I'm not taking any care there, but I'm trying to add a little bit of poke to it, help it poke through the mix. You can try limiters, you can try compressors on there. It will change the feel of the reverb. You can kind of reduce peaks as well. Is another important thing. When you're mixing, you want to try and get limit the peaks of the track. That will help in with the loudness potential to get a louder mix. And so if you've got kind of the reverb peaking at certain points, putting a compressor on there and capturing those little peaks can be a great thing. Here's an example here. So you can already see kind of the peaks there. If we pull the ratio down, attack of 30 is kind of good. We want a little bit. See that one just catching the peaks? And there you go. You've got a whole different feel of the feel to the reverb. There's more bump, groove, pump to it. So now it's kind of, I've got the reverb pumping, so it's working on the snare hits, so it's pumping up and down, so the reverb snaps up. That's another great tool. You can just, you can get really creative with it. Adds really nice percussive movement to your track by doing that with the reverbs. You can also try putting the processor before the reverb. But first, it just, for a sort of different, it'll be subtly different. I mean, you can even try putting a reverb before your compressor, sidechain compressor. So if you want to make it a little bit more dramatic pumping, put a reverb before, as an insert, before your sidechain compressor. If you set into the sidechain, and you'll get a more dramatic effect, and you'll be able to design a more original effect with your sidechains, with the reverb feeding into the sidechain compressor in the pump, and you'll get you could able to design it by messing with the pre-delays, whatever, to get like the front of it being louder or the end of it, you know what I mean? You could be quite creative by doing that. I've already kind of touched on it, but brightening up reverbs for the EQ, it can be really nice on vocals. I mean, it'll you might feel that EQing the vocals directly is not really, you might cause more harshness or whatever. So you can go in and put the EQ on the reverb, give it more presence. So reverb vocals always have a lot of presence around kind of 2K, 3K, 3.5K. You might want to just put a smidgen to it, but that it can always. It's always touch and go whether it's going to sound all right, even though it wants it. So you can go on and put the 3K boost and the presence boost on the reverb channel and bring that underneath, and that will give it some more sparkle and weight to it as well. And it's be much more transparent and more airy as well by blending in the dry and the wet signals. What else did I want to go over? Mono reverbs. You can mono reverbs are great. Just don't be afraid to use them. You can. Mono reverbs are great on lead vocals or a lead instrument when you want to keep them really locked into the center of the mix. Another thing you can try and do is to take the same lead part if it's stereo, but have pan one part left and the other part right, and put the mono reverb on, say the hard left pan, and leave the right hand side dry. That will give you some different kind of feel and effects, and again you can adjust the pre-delays and everything else and the settings that go in there. Mono reverbs are really good to add to a source if you want to give it ambience, to make it feel like it's like recorded with one mic, if you were going for some kind of old vintage sort of sound.